Patriots claim Christian Ellis back from Raiders. We've got some disappointing news for Raiders fans today. Linebacker Christian Ellis, who the Raiders signed just last Friday, has officially been reclaimed by the New England Patriots. Essentially, the Patriots matched the offer the Raiders had given him, which means the Raiders will miss out on Ellis, a player with undeniable potential. Christian Ellis is only 26 years old, and his best football is still ahead of him. Watching his tape, it's clear he has tremendous upside. The Patriots clearly saw the same thing. Despite already signing 2 free agent linebackers at a combined cost of $15 million per year, the Patriots still felt it was worth spending another $4 to $5 million annually to bring Ellis back. For the Raiders, this means going back to the drawing board. Ellis was a strong candidate to become their starting linebacker, a true linebacker one. Naturally, this decision has sparked mixed reactions. Some are questioning why the Raiders didn't offer more to secure Ellis. Reports indicate they signed him to a 2-year deal worth $4.5 million per year. If the Raiders believed Ellis was the answer, why not go higher? $7 million, $8 million, or even $9 million annually. The reality is, Christian Ellis's value is in the $4.5 million range. At that price, there's room for upside without the burden of sky-high expectations. Paying $8 to $10 million, however, comes with the expectation of top 10 performance, and that could have been a gamble the Raiders weren't willing to take. The good news? There are still options for the Raiders to fill this need. Linebacker is often considered a system position, meaning good coaching and the right fit can turn average players into stars. Coaches like Robert Saleh, Mike Vrabel, and even Patrick Graham have proven success developing linebackers. Take Robert Spillane, for example. Graham turned him from a career backup into a top 12 linebacker. Christian Ellis could have been that next success story for Patrick Graham, but now the Raiders will need to shift their focus. The draft is an excellent opportunity to find a promising young linebacker. Players like Amari Burney, Amari Gaynor, or Tommy Eichenberg could all be potential targets. Eichenberg, in particular, stands out. Graham selected him in the 5th round, and he's shown flashes of real potential. The Raiders could also revisit in-house options. Luke Masterson, for instance, is still on the radar as a restricted free agent, and he's someone who's shown promise. Additionally, this is the part of the offseason when some solid free agents are still available at reasonable prices. There's plenty of talent out there, and all it takes is finding that one player who clicks in the system. Linebacker is a tricky position to nail down. It's not uncommon to draft several players in the later rounds or bring in rookies, only to see some of them never develop. But every so often, you find that gem, a 7th-round pick or an undrafted free agent who becomes a key contributor. For the Raiders, the search continues, and whether it's through the draft or free agency, the hope is that the next linebacker one is just around the corner. Linebacker development and Geno Smith contract questions. Developing a top-tier linebacker in the NFL can take time. Sometimes it's players who have been in the league for 3 or 4 years that finally hit their stride in years 5 or 6. We've seen this with players like Robert Spillane, and the hope is that the Raiders can find another linebacker who follows a similar path. Time will tell how that search unfolds. Now, shifting gears to a topic that's been gaining a lot of attention, especially within RaiderNation, Geno Smith's contract situation. It's becoming a very intriguing story. There's been plenty of speculation and buzz among fans, even if other sources aren't talking about it as much. The big question is, why hasn't Geno Smith signed his extension yet? Tashin Reed from The Athletic previously suggested that an extension might come around March 16th, tied to the guarantee of part of Smith's $31 million salary. The expectation was clear. Smith would sign, and it was just a matter of time. Even Vincent Bonsignore mentioned last week that an extension seemed imminent. There were reports that Geno Smith was already in the building, with players like Max Crosby hinting at it as well. But here we are, still waiting. Why hasn't the deal been finalized? Could there be a disagreement behind the scenes? It's a valid question, especially considering how quickly other teams wrap up these situations. Take Derek Carr, for example. When he signed with the New Orleans Saints, the deal was finalized. The press conference happened within 3 days, and the media got their questions answered. That's what you'd expect for a franchise quarterback, a player who's the face and leader of the team. With Geno Smith, the situation feels different. He's the leader of the Raiders now, and you'd think that within a week of his trade, the extension would be completed, announced, and celebrated. But that hasn't happened, and it raises questions about what's holding it up. Could it be a matter of disagreement over contract terms? Let's take a step back and consider what we know. Geno Smith spent 4 years with the Seattle Seahawks, starting for 3 of them. Over that time, he earned the trust of the organization and proved himself as a capable quarterback. But as he entered the final year of his contract, he had leverage. Smith reportedly told the Seahawks he wasn't willing to play for $31 million in 2025 without more guaranteed money or a higher average annual value on his deal. Reports suggested Seattle offered him around $40 million, but Smith declined. That brings us to the Raiders. Geno didn't come to Las Vegas to play on his current contract with no changes. He came with the expectation that the Raiders would extend him, guaranteeing him more money and increasing the overall value of the deal. While part of his $31 million salary is guaranteed, it's clear Smith wants more security for his future. So, what's the holdup? Has the Raiders front office hesitated to meet his demands? Or is it simply a matter of timing? Either way, this is a storyline worth keeping an eye on. Geno Smith is expected to lead this team, but until that extension is signed, the situation feels unresolved. Geno Smith's extension and Quinn Ewers' visit. It's curious that Geno Smith's extension hasn't been finalized yet. I have a theory, though. It's possible we'll see this resolved either later this week or after the draft. Here's why. The Raiders might be strategically delaying the extension to influence the draft board. If Geno Smith doesn't have a deal in place, teams picking after the Raiders, like the Jets or even the Giants, could feel the pressure. They might worry the Raiders are eyeing a quarterback with the 6th pick, forcing them to trade up to secure their guy. For the Raiders, the ideal scenario is having a second quarterback go in the top 5. We already know CamWard is a lock for the #1 overall pick, but if another quarterback is taken early, it increases the chances of a top-tier player falling to Las Vegas. The Raiders could be playing the long game here, keeping other teams guessing about their plans, whether it's drafting ShedeurSanders, JacksonDart, or someone else. Of course, this could all just be speculation, and Geno's extension could happen any day now. When it does, it'll likely be a short-term deal, maybe 2 more years on top of this season. That would carry Geno through to around age 38 or 39, which feels like a reasonable endpoint for the Raiders' investment in him. Still, there's also the possibility the Raiders are keeping their options open for this year's draft, as a recent report suggests. Quinn Ewers visits the Raiders. One name generating buzz is quarterback Quinn Ewers. Reports indicate Ewers is set for a top 30 visit with the Raiders, along with the Colts and Cowboys. He's already visited the Jets and a few other teams, making it clear he's in high demand as teams look ahead to the draft. Ewers is an interesting prospect. After his first year at Texas, the program brought in Arch Manning, one of the most hyped names in college football, and the nephew of Peyton and Eli Manning. That put immense pressure on Ewers over the next 2 seasons, as fans and analysts alike viewed Arch Manning as the future of Texas football. Despite the weight of expectations, Ewers put together 2 solid seasons, though some believe he underperformed, considering the NFL-caliber talent around him. What's intriguing about Ewers is that he could have transferred out of Texas and likely commanded $12 million in NIL deals, but he chose to stick with the program and then enter the NFL draft. There's clear potential in him. History has shown that staying an extra year in college can do wonders for a quarterback's draft stock. CamWard is a great example. He transferred to Miami, thrived, and became the projected #1 overall pick. Another name that comes to mind is Garrett Nussmeier of LSU, who decided to stay in college and is now being touted as one of the top quarterbacks in his class. For the Raiders, the question remains, how does Ewers fit into their plans? Whether they're considering him as a backup plan or a long-term investment, his visit signals that the team is exploring all options at the quarterback position. Developing a long-term quarterback option. As the draft draws closer, the question of a long-term quarterback option for the Raiders becomes increasingly important. Could Quinn Ewers be the answer? Ewers is an intriguing prospect. Some experts argue that he could have stayed in college for another year and been the top quarterback in next year's class. Instead, he declared for this draft, and while he's raw, his best football is likely still ahead of him. There's potential there, even if it requires some patience and development. The Raiders could target Ewers in the 2nd or 3rd round, or possibly even later. While one quarterback is guaranteed to go #1 overall this year, the rest of the class remains unpredictable. Players like ShedeurSanders and JacksonDart might fall to the late first round, or even the second round, while someone like Ewers, currently projected as QB6, could be available in the fourth or fifth round. This opens the door for the Raiders to snag a developmental quarterback they can mold for the future. Chip Kelly's role in developing quarterbacks. One advantage the Raiders have is their offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly. Kelly's experience and offensive expertise make him the perfect mentor for a young quarterback. Whether it's Ewers, Will Howard, Kyle McCord, or another promising prospect, Kelly has the tools to guide their development. McCord, for instance, had a strong season at Ohio State, losing only in the game before the national championship the year prior. Fans were quick to critique him after that loss, but his talent is evident. Players like Sanders, Dart, and even others could be available in the second round, but the Raiders need to make a calculated decision on who to invest in. While Aidan O'Connell is on the roster, he hasn't shown enough to be considered the long-term solution. The Raiders need someone with clear potential, and this year's draft provides several interesting options. The future of Chip Kelly with the Raiders. Speaking of Chip Kelly, his future with the Raiders could be pivotal. While he's had head coaching stints with the Eagles and 49ers that didn't pan out, he's found a valuable role as an offensive coordinator. It's unlikely that 1 or 2 successful years in this position will propel him back into head coaching conversations. Instead, he might remain with the Raiders for 3 or 4 years, or even transition into a potential successor to PeteCarroll down the line. Kelly's stability could be crucial for the Raiders' offensive growth, especially with a young quarterback in development. What's next for the Raiders? With the draft about a month away, the Raiders have likely completed most of their major free agency moves. We may see 2 or 3 more signings leading up to the draft, and team workouts are just around the corner. This is the time of year when rumors and speculation dominate the conversation, and it's exciting for fans to imagine what the team might do next. The Raiders need to ensure they have a long-term quarterback plan in place, whether that's locking in Geno Smith for the next couple of years while developing a rookie or pursuing a bold move in the draft. The decision they make now will shape their future. Stay tuned. Football news is year-round, and the draft is right around the corner.